Okay, so we're starting the 8th chapter now. And as we discussed, the 8th chapter has the seeds of from the last 2 verses of the 7th chapter, where Krishna brings out some terms which are not necessarily unfamiliar, that Krishna Arjun has never heard them, but he's looking for more clarity about what they actually mean. And so that's where the whole chapters is connected. And let me see, where's my slide? Yes. Okay. So let me show you what's the. So the acronym for this chapter is DEAD. Yeah, kind of suits it. We can talk about death. So in the first 4 verses, Arjun has those doubts, and Krishna will answer. So there, 7th chapter, Krishna uses 8 technical terms: Brahma, Adhyatma, Karma, Sadi Bhuta, Sadi Devam, Sadi Yagya, and Prayan Kale. And Arjun is going to ask for clarity. So that's where the whole connection is for both the chapters. So, so those first 2 verses of the 8th chapter, Arjun is going to ask these things, all these 8 things. Kim tad Brahma, kim Adhyatam, kim Karma, Purushottam, Adibhut, all. So he's going to ask all of them. In the 3rd and 4th verse, Krishna will answer 7 out of those 8 questions. Okay. So the first 4 verses, Arjun's doubts, Krishna answers 7 of them. The remaining entire chapter, from verse 5 till 28, it answers that last question which Arjun has, which is about how to remember you at the time of death. We'll read that verse when we come to the 2nd verse. So the whole chapter is dedicated for that. So Krishna will speak about it from different perspectives. And what are the different perspectives? So let's look at more details of it. So doubts, Arjun asks 8 questions. 5, remembrance of Krishna at the time of death, answer to first 7 questions. Then the 9 to 22, which is the main chunk of the chapter, is about remembering Krishna in different sense. Bhakti, by comparing material and spiritual natures, by doing yoga mishra bhakti. We have talked about karma mishra bhakti, right? 2nd chapter was doing your karma in Krishna consciousness. 3rd, 4th chapter was also karma. So, but now we'll be talking about yoga mishra bhakti. And then the last 6 verses, will explain to us how Bhakti yoga is much easier than Ashtanga yoga or any other forms of yoga for that matter. So Krishna again will bring the whole chapter back, the whole discussion back to devotion. So this is the way the chapter has been divided, and the acronym being DEAD. And so this is the way to look at it. Let me see if I have it. No. Okay, so these were the slides. Let me go back to the chapter. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this chapter is called it's Attaining the Supreme. So this chapter is Attaining the Supreme. 1 second. The earlier chapter was, the 7th chapter was Knowledge of the Absolute. So that chapter was Knowledge of the Absolute. So Attaining the Supreme means, so Prabhupada has named it as Attaining the Supreme. And I have mentioned this before. Sometimes you will see that chapters are not named in the same way by different people, different sages or different persons who translate the Bhagavad Gita. So these names in the English have been given by Prabhupada himself. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, gave slightly different names, so it's okay. The Sanskrit name for this chapter is Akshara Brahma Yoga. Krishna's answer in the 3rd word starts with Akshara. So the Akshara Brahma Yoga is the name of this chapter, but English is Attaining the Supreme, as Prabhupada has given us. And so 7th was Knowledge of the Absolute. So this chapter is how do you attain that absolute? So attaining the Supreme, right? So that's the essence here, right? So we begin with Arjun's doubt, right? And as we have talked in the past, our doubting is a function of intelligence, right? At no point in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna reprimand Arjun for asking questions, so many questions. On the contrary, he encourages Arjun to intelligently contemplate all his answers and subsequently make his own decisions. So this chapter opens up with Arjun's doubt and questions on several spiritual concepts, right? And Krishna concisely will answer all 7 of them, as I said, and then prepares to answer the last one. So and then so that's where the chapter is going to move towards, in that direction. Okay, so let's look at the first verse. Kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purushottama, adi bhuta chakam prokta, adi devam kim uchyate. Arjun inquired, O my lord, O supreme person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Okay. So all this is coming from the last two verses of the seventh chapter. Okay. So this is the first verse. Arjun is asking, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are the fruitive activities, material manifestation, demigods? That's the first thing. So let's look at the. Oh, this is a good point. Prabhupada brings out a very good point in here. Arjun is addressing Krishna as Purushottama. So this establishes the fact that Krishna is a person, right? He's not an amorphous being. So Purusha Uttama. Okay. So Purusha Uttama. He's an Uttama Purusha. He's the best of the living entities. Right. So the word Uttama means not of this material world. So the word Ut, Prabhupada explains this in a lecture he gave in 1970. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, so he gave a lecture, but so he was explaining that how Ut means above, right? And Tama means darkness. Right? So Uttama means above this darkness. So Uttama Purusha. So Purusha Uttama means somebody who's above this material world, the darkness of this material world. So Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Purushottama. Right? So the Purushottama, and and he's calling Krishna Purushottama because he knows that only Krishna can answer these questions. Right? We should know whom to ask. It is important to have mentors, but not everybody can be our mentor. I cannot listen to everybody, otherwise I'll go crazy. Somebody will come and tell me, "Oh, Premantham, you don't know how to wear a kurta in the or you don't know how to put a tilak." Somebody will come and tell me, "Oh, this is not the way you pay your obeisances." Somebody will come, "Oh, this is not the way you do your arati." All that. So people will come and give you so many thoughts. That's one thing we become very good at when we come to ISKCON. That we become very good at giving suggestions to others. So we should only have a select set of mentors, and those should have been very carefully chosen. We should not let everybody be our mentor. Here, so Arjun is establishing that Krishna, only you can answer my queries. Nobody else can. And all these words that we see here, Adi Bhutam, Adi Devam, Adi. So the word Adi means which rules over, right? You know the word Adhyaksha. Adhyaksha means who's the leader, Adhyaksha. That he's the party Adhyaksha, of a political party. He can be a party Adhyaksha. He's the head of the party. So the word Adi means to rule over, right? Under whose vision everything is being executed in somewhere. So that means Adi. So that's why Arjuna is asking, what is Adi Yagya? What is the topmost? Sorry, what is Adi Adi Bhutam? So the Adi of Bhuta, Adi Devam. Who's this? So he's asking more about that aspect of Adi. Adi. He's bringing that Adi. So and then he's bringing other things. So the word. And then he's asking about Brahma and also Adhyatma. So these questions are being asked, which Krishna will answer later on. So we'll talk about them more when we move forward. Adhi Yagna Katham ko atra dehe asmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katham geyosi niyat atma bhi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice? How does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So one technical aspect here is, you'll notice that some people, when they will talk of these two verses, some people who understand these verses, they will say there are only 7 questions, and some will say there are 8 questions. So pick your choice, whatever you want to. It's not that complex. I just want to show you how it's 8. I take it as 8, but if you like, you can take it as 7. So Arjun is asking Kim. Kim means what? What is Brahma? What is Adhyatma? What is Karma? What is Adi Bhutam? Adi Devam? So those 5 questions. Then he says Adi Yagya. Who's Adi Yagya? and Dehasmin. So here's where the difference happens. Adi Yagya. So what is Arjun is asking, who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body? Some people take this as one question. Some people take this as two questions. I take them as two questions. I say that who is the Lord of sacrifice? One question. And how does that Lord of sacrifice live in the body? Second question. So for me, the total comes to 8 questions. For some people, it can come to 7. So please don't get confused if you hear somebody saying there are 7 questions in here, not 8, and somebody saying it. So that's the only difference. Tiny, just technical aspect I wanted to explain. So, so this is what Arjun is asking. So Prabhupada is explaining here. Lord of sacrifice may refer to either Indra or Vishnu, because they both are presiding deities of a yagya according to the Vedas, right? So most of the karma kanda mantras are addressed to Indra in the Vedas, and the end result of all yagyas is worshipping Vishnu, right? So whenever we sit in any yagya, ISKCON or not ISKCON, doesn't matter. Vishnu is always glorified, because Vishnu is the chief among the three topmost demigods of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So the 3 guna avatar. So he's the topmost in them. He's the chief of them. So Arjun is asking, who is this Adhi Yagya? And how is he residing in the body of all living entities, right? And you must have said that whenever there is yagyas, towards the end, we always recite mantras for Krishna, for Vishnu. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Sadam Sada Pashyanti Surya Diviva Chakshur Atmamam. That's one of the very common verses, that as the sun rays are connecting with me, and the sun is looking at me through the sun rays, sages look towards Vishnu and lotus feet of Vishnu. So Vishnu is the Adhi Yagya. So that's Prabhupada is explaining that part, that how Vishnu is the Adhi Yagya. Now, Prabhupada is now talking about in a broad generic sense that why are these questions even coming to Arjun? Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjun, because Arjun is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjun here addresses him as Madhusudana. So the word, you all must have heard the story of Madhu and Kaitab. Madhu and Kaitab were 2 demons who stole the Vedas from Brahma. And then the Lord comes as an incarnation of Hayagriva, a horse, to take those, to kill those demons, take the Vedas back and give it to Brahma, right? And there might be many different reasons, hey, why did they steal the Vedas and all that? But one easy way to understand this is that Krishna is, whenever Krishna comes to give a message, there is a story built around it. So when Hayagriva, Vishnu came as Hayagriva to give that knowledge again to Brahma, so he just created a scenario around it. That's it, just to restore that. So Krishna likes, creating a lot of hype around himself when he comes. He's the hero of the story. So that is why, this whole pastime happens, and Krishna is called as Madhusudana. So when we get in doubt, our knowledge gets covered, chant Madhusudan's name. When if you're going to give an exam and you forget the answer, you chant Madhusudan. Oh, Madhusudan, you have stolen my memory away. Please give it back to me. So remove this doubt, remove this covering from my mind, remove this forgetfulness, these demons of forgetfulness of knowledge. Take this away from me. So that's why the name Madhusudan has been highlighted by Prabhupada in the discussion. The Prabhupada is kind of getting into more details of what happens at the time of death. All the bodily functions are disrupted, and the mind is not in a proper condition. Right? Thus, disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not able to. This is a very important one. So, this is an important one. So, thus, disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kulashekar, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, just now I'm quite healthy, and it is better than I die immediately, so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet." This is a very beautiful verse. You all must have heard it. This is a prayers of King Kula Shekhar. What's it called? Sorry, I forgot. It's the prayers of King Kula Shekhar. And Prabhupada used to recite this verse. It was Krishna Tudiya Padapankaja Panjarantam. Adeva me Vishatu Manasa Rajhansa. Prana Prayan Samaye Kafa with Kafa with Kapha Vata Pitte. That, my throat might be choked. Why not we hear this? The Prabhupada sang this in a very beautiful way. Let me just play it for you. I had it somewhere in my playlist on YouTube. So you'll get to know the verse, and it's a very good verse to, you can sing it, chant it. Give me 1 minute. Okay.
It Mukunda Mala Stotra, Prabhuji.
Yes, that's right. Yes, Mukunda Mala Stotra. Yes, that's the one. Thank you, bro. So let me just play this for you. You can Google it on YouTube, or probably I can give you a link. Let me share this. Okay. And I think I have to share sound also. Share sound. Yes. I'm sharing sound also. So let's play this. Let me know if you can't hear it, because I have my headphones on. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it. Let's see.
Krishna Tadiya Padapankaj Panjarantam Addaiva Visatume Manasa Rajhansa Prana Prayana Samai Kaphavata Pitau Kantavarodhana Vidhau Smaranam Kutaste Krishna Tadiya Padapankaj Panjarantam Addaiva Visatume Manarasa Rajhansa Prana Prayana Samai Kaphavata Pitau Kantavarodhana Vidhau Smaranam Kutaste.
Were you all able to hear it?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can hear it. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this
Can
is
you
the beautiful.
share in the WhatsApp? Sorry, can you share
Yes.
link? Okay.
I'll do that, Madhya. It's a beautiful verse, and just the way Prabhupada sound, obviously coming from a transcendental realm, it can pierce the ignorance that I'm living in. So, and this is the verse I was referring to. So this is the verse Prabhupada is referring to in this section that we were just reading. This one, that how, sometimes a swan looking for food, it goes into under the water, ducks under the water, and the roots of the lotus, there might be something that the swan finds to eat, and then gets entangled in that lotus leaf, in the roots of that lotus. And so the king is saying that let me be so much entangled at this moment, because at the time of my death, there might be so many challenges I'll be having. If you had the opportunity, or whatever you may call it, to see somebody leaving their body, you'll see that when they're leaving their body, they have a sense of, they have a gargling sound coming from their throat, because there's so much of mucus being accumulated there that the breathing is very hard, and their body is not strong enough to clear that out. So it's a very scary situation to be in. I can't realize it at this moment, because because of the illusion that covering. So hoping that with all our efforts, Krishna will remove that ignorance and let us see what a end we are kind of moving towards. So Prabhupada is bringing this poem out by King Kula Shekhar. So Arjun's question, how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such time. So he's asking this question. So how can one fix this, right? His mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. So these are the 8 questions that Arjun has asked Krishna, and then Krishna will start answering them in verse 3. So let's see. Akshara Brahma Paramam Subhavo Adhyatma Muchyate Bhuta Bhavo Dbhava Karo Visarga Karma Sangita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, self. Action pertaining to the development of material bodies of the living entities is called karma or fruitive activities. So this verse. So the verse, as I had mentioned it earlier, the word Brahman is used differently in different sections of Bhagavad Gita. Here, the word Brahman is referring to the living entity. Later on, in the 14th chapter, we'll read Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratishthaṁ. There, Brahman means the Brahma Jyoti. Okay. And then also, I think that's also another verse that comes in the 14th chapter is Mama Yonir Mahad Brahma, where the Brahma is referring to as the material substance. So we have to be careful what the meaning of the word is. We cannot generalize it that this word means the same everywhere. So we don't want to do that. So just a word of caution there, so that we don't mix them. Right. That is why Prabhupada takes the pain of giving us a word by word meaning for each and every single verse. I might have, I out of my ignorance sometimes don't read them, but then that's the whole purpose behind these, because each of these words, they're so powerful in themselves. Each verse of Bhagavad Gita is like a temple. We can enter into it. We can contemplate the meaning. We can pray to it. There are so many verses in Bhagavad Gita which I have heard from senior devotees that they have memorized these verses so that they can chant those verses to themselves. They can think about them. They can contemplate upon them. Right? One of my favorite verses comes in this chapter. Right? It will come in this chapter. Tasmad sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yuddhacha. That tasmad sarvesh, that all the time remember me and fight, Arjun. So that gives me a lot of solace that I don't have to leave everything and go. All I have to do is remember Krishna and fight. So that was just an example, but so these words are very powerful. So you have to contemplate their meaning. So the sequence in which Arjun has asked the questions, Krishna is answering them in the same sequence. Right. So the first one is Akshara Param Brahma. So the Parama refers to transcendental here, because later on we'll see the word Parama will also be used for Krishna. Right. Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. Arjun in the 10th chapter, verse number 12 and 13, I think. There are two verses clubbed together. He will glorify Krishna as Param Brahma. So there the word Param is referring to Krishna. But here the word Param, Krishna Prabhupada is saying, is transcendental. It's not talking about necessarily about, completely about Krishna. It's transcendental, not supreme. So Subhava is eternal nature. Right? So this eternal nature is Adhyatma, the self. Right? So when we say, right, we must have heard Adhyatma Jivan. The word Adhyatma is commonly used, right? So when we talk of Adhyatma, we are talking about the very nature of our own selves, right? That's being discussed. My nature. What is my nature? I am a spirit soul. That is my nature, my true nature. So that is me. That is Adhyatma. Knowledge of that is Adhyatma. Right? So Brahman is me, living entity, and my knowledge is Adhyatma. That's the way to understand. Bhuta Bhava Udbhava Karo. Well, this is very interesting. Where is that? Visarga Karma Sangita. So Visarga, the word Visarga and Sarga, you'll see this, Prabhupada uses these words sometimes. So the word Sarga is when the original Mahavishnu creates millions of Brahmandas, billions of universes from his pores. So that is Sarga, right? That's the primary creation. But then there's a secondary creation that happens. When Lord Garbhodhakshay Vishnu, in each Brahmanda, in each universe, he gives creation again, right? So universes are created, but then Brahma has to meditate on Krishna, and then Krishna tells him to do austerity, and then he realizes what he has to do, and he creates the 14 planetary systems. So that is called Visarga. So somebody can ask, why is this Visarga taking place? This Visarga is taking place because I have done karma. Me and millions and billions of living entities like me. Because we have done karma, Krishna, as Garbhodhaksha Vishnu, is creating this world again. So this is called Visarga. So that's what he's making. Bhuta Bhava Udbhava Karo. Visarga Karma. So the Visarga is happening because I am doing activities. I am doing karma. When we stop doing karma, there'll be no more birth for us. We'll no more be a part of this Visarga. Right? But because I'm doing karma, I'm a part of this visarga. So, that is why Krishna, whenever we do anything, even in this material world, if we can bring Krishna into it, it automatically becomes, a karma. There's no more karma. We're taking up karma because of that. You can look at the beautiful sunshine, but you can see that, oh, Krishna made that sunshine. So just imagine if the sunshine or the sunset is so beautiful, how beautiful will the Creator be? So once we practice a karma, we don't take birth again in this visarga process. But till then, because I'm been doing that while I'm a part of this visarga, my next birth is being defined, and that is karma. So karma is defining my next birth. So karma is defining me being a part of this visarga. That's the way to understand this concept of visarga karma. And let's see what Prabhupada Krishna is saying. Actions pertaining to the development of material bodies of living entities called karma or fruitive activities. Any effort which I'm doing, being self-conscious, is karma, and then everything that I do, being Krishna conscious, is akarma. As long as I'm doing karma, I keep coming back here, and that is that in this life. Okay, let's see what Prabhupada is saying. Anything here? I didn't highlight anything. There's one concept Prabhupada bigs out here of achyuta. Okay. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord Achyuta never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahma assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in the Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entities, distinguished from Para Brahman, Supreme Lord. So the concept that I briefly touched upon is, Prabhupada is highlighting that Param Brahma is Krishna, Brahman is me. Right? Prabhupada says Krishna is Achyuta because he never falls down. But we all, as living entities, as long as we are doing karma, we are Vichyuta. Vichyuta means fallen. So Krishna is Achyuta, never falls down. I am Vichyuta, I have fallen down. Achyuta and Vichyuta. Right? So if we serve Krishna, that is our Achyuta position. Right? So to become Krishna conscious means we become Achyuta. We all, it's said that we all have gotras, right? When we given in our birth, parents gave us gotras. But then in Krishna conscious, when we come, our gotra becomes Achyuta. Gotra is a family tradition in India, right? According to Vedic civilization, everybody's got a gotra. Some family, rishis, some coming down through rishis. So we have to become Achyuta gotra. We have to become part of the family of Krishna. Right now, I'm Vichyuta. I'm fallen. I've forgotten that I'm a part of Krishna's family. When we revive our consciousness, I realize I'm Krishna's family. Everything becomes perfect. Then I become Achyuta. So the concept of Achyuta Prabhupada is bringing out here. Okay. And then this is the continuation here. Answer, yes. Krishna is answering the remaining parts of Arjun's question. What is Adi Bhutam? Krishna asked Arjun. Sorry, Arjun asked Krishna. Adi Bhutam Chakim Prokta. So Adi means, as I said, the overseer. So Adi Bhuta means so the living entity. So Adi can also means pertaining to. So pertaining to the living entity, the Bhuta. So Bhuta is a living entity, right? So that's Adi Bhuta. So Krishna is saying Adi Bhuta means the physical manifestation. So pertaining to this living entity, the matter that is around me is called Adi Bhuta, the physical manifestation. And Krishna is giving a quality of that physical manifestation is that it is constantly changing. Oh, best of the embodied beings, the physical nature, which is constantly changing, is called Adi Bhuta. The universal form of the Lord, which includes all the demigods, like those of the sun and the moon, is called Adi Deva. And I, the Supreme Lord, represented as the super soul in heart of every embodied being, am called Adi Yagya, the Lord of the sacrifice. So Adi Bhuta, pertaining to the living entity. So what is pertaining to the living entity is the matter which is surrounding us, the perishable nature of the material nature. Right? So, and then there are various personalities that govern certain energies in this world, material world. So Krishna says, Purusha cha Adi Devatam. They are called Adi Deva. People, those personalities who are taking care of different energies, sun, moon, Indra, demigods, right? Then the word Adhiyagya. Adhiyagya refers to the personality that is in charge of all the yagya sacrifices, right? Everything we do can become a sacrifice, right? There was this verse in the 4th chapter, right? I forgot what was the verse, how did it go? Where we were told that that everything can be used. This Arjun was in doubt that how can my fighting be a yagya? And Krishna explains to him that how everything could become a, like the spoon that puts the ghee in the fire can be your bow and arrow. So all that. So Krishna says, so everything in this world can be converted into a yagya. In fact, for example, the food we eat is also yagya, right? How is yagya? We are eating something, we are offering. To whom are we offering? The fire of digestion. Right? And Krishna will say this in the 15th chapter, and I think it's the 14th verse. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashrita. Aham Vaishvanaro. So Vaishvanar is the fire of digestion. So Krishna will say, I'm the fire of digestion. So Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva. So Krishna is the to whom we are offering the food we are eating into the fire of digestion. So Krishna is digesting the food, he's the energy producer and all that. So everything could be a yagya for that, for example. Right? So that's the way to understand this. So that's Adi Yagya. So Krishna is explaining. And he's saying that I, the Supreme Lord, represented as the super soul in the heart of every embodied being, am called the Adi Yagya. So this answers both the questions, which I had separated out, saying Adi Yagya Katham Kotra Dehe Asmin Madhusudana. Krishna, Arjuna asked this in the second verse, that who is Adi Yagya and where does the Adi Yagya live? So Krishna is told Adi Yagya, who is Adi Yagya? That I am the Adi Yagya. And where do I live? As a Paramatma, I live in the heart region of every living entity. That's the answer that Krishna is giving. So you'll notice that Krishna has answered 7 of the 8 questions already in 2 verses. Quick snapshot. He's not interested in giving all these details extensively to Arjun. Bhagavad Gita was spoken in a state of an emergency, kind of. So Krishna is not going to spend on things that are not that very much necessary. And then we'll bring this section up in the next class. But if you just say Krishna's Arjun's question was Prayan Kale Katham, Prayan Kale, that how to remember. And Krishna will begin this 5th by Antakale, remember me. Chamameva, remember me. That's where it's going to start. Right. So yes, so that'll be the last question, and Krishna will use the whole remaining chapter to answer the last question. Right. And in this verse, in the verse before we're just reading, Krishna is mentioning about himself as the super soul. And as the super soul, I'm living in everybody's heart. And we will talk about more detail in this in the 13th chapter. Krishna will give more details about himself as a super soul. Right? He'll say that how Kshetragya chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. That I know about every living entity because I'm sitting in everybody's heart. And what am I doing there? I'm upadrashta anumantacha bharta bhokta maheshwara. That's the 23rd chapter, 23rd verse of the 13th chapter. Upadrashta anumanta. I am permitter and I'm the overseer. That's what Krishna is doing as a super soul. Right? So he's playing a very significant role as a super soul. A super soul comes with us throughout our lives. Wherever we go, I become a dog in the next life, an insect, a demigod. The super soul will always come with me. And the super soul's job is to guide me through this circuitous life and path that I have adopted by using my tiny free will. Okay, I'll pause here. I won't pick up the next section today. So if anybody has any thoughts, comments, please